Before I say anything else, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly. Not to me, to yourself. When is the last time the person you love felt truly seen by you? Not provided for, not taken care of, not managed. Seen. Take a moment with that. My name is Billy. I am 83 years old, and I almost destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Not with cruelty, not with anger, but with comfort. With the quiet, dangerous comfort of a man who thought that because nothing was broken, everything was fine. I was wrong, and by the time I understood how wrong I was, she was already gone. Not physically, she was still in the house, but she had left in every way that matters. She had stopped hoping I would notice. Stay with me, because what I learned, after 50 years of marriage and nearly losing it all, might be the most important thing you hear today. Dr. Miles Monroe once said, "The greatest tragedy in life is not death. It is a life without purpose." I want to tell you something. Marriages die the same way. Not from hatred, not from one big betrayal. They die from lost purpose. Slowly, quietly, like a fire nobody tended. I almost let mine go out. This is the story of how I saved it. And this is my warning to you, before you have to learn what I learned the hard way. Let me tell you about the man I was at 40 years old. I was faithful. I never chased other women. I came home every evening. I paid every bill. I didn't raise my voice and I didn't raise my hand. By every standard I had been raised with. And mind you, the bar was not always very high back then. I was a good man. Faithful, hardworking, dependable, emotionally absent. A full package, apparently. And the terrible thing about being that kind of man is that you believe your own story. You look at yourself and you think, I am doing everything right. I am carrying this family on my back. What more could possibly be needed? What I did not understand, what took me decades to understand, is that there is a difference between a man who is present and a man who is there. I was there, every day, physically in that house, sitting in my chair, sleeping in that bed, but I was not present, not in the way she needed, not in the way that made her feel like the most important person in the room, or even like a person at all, some days, rather than a fixture. Something the house had, like the furniture. And here is what nobody ever told me, and what I need you to hear. Being a good provider is not the same as being a good husband. I provided bread, but a person cannot live on bread alone. She needed to know I saw her, that I was curious about her, that I was still, after all these years, interested in who she was becoming. I was not because I stopped caring, but because I made the oldest mistake a comfortable man can make. I assumed that because I had not left, she knew I loved her. I assumed that because I had kept my promises, she felt cherished. I assumed that because nothing was wrong, everything was fine. 3 assumptions, 3 lies, each one costing me a little more of her, day by day, until one evening, a Tuesday, an ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday, everything changed. And when I tell you what she said to me that night, I want you to ask yourself if you have ever felt what she felt, or if someone in your life has ever tried to tell you the same thing, and you weren't ready to hear it yet. People expect marriages to end with a war. They expect raised voices, broken dishes, the kind of collapse you can point to and say, there, that's the moment. That's when it ended. But most marriages don't end that way. Most marriages end in a long, quiet drift. Like 2 boats that were tied together, and one day, Nobody can say exactly when the rope came loose, and the current did the rest. No fight, no explosion, just distance, growing so slowly, so naturally, that you don't notice it until you're sitting across from each other at dinner and you realize you have run out of things to say. Not because you've said everything, because you've stopped trying to find new things. That was my home. We had conversations, but they were not the conversations of two people building a life together. They were logistics. The children, the bills, the grocery list, what needs to happen this week. Functional, efficient, cold. We were running a household together. We had forgotten how to be husband and wife. And here's the thing about this kind of distance. It is so easy to miss. Because nothing feels wrong. The house is still standing. Meals are still made. Schedules are still kept. From the outside, it looks like a marriage. But on the inside, she was disappearing. She wasn't leaving the house. She was leaving the conversation. Piece by piece, she had stopped bringing herself fully to our life together. Her thoughts, her fears, her hopes, the things that made her who she was, because she had learned, over many quiet years, that I wasn't really listening. And I did not know. I genuinely did not know, because she was still there, still kind, still doing everything a wife does. She had not stopped loving me. She had just stopped expecting me to notice her. And there is something heartbreaking about that. About a person who has given up hoping to be seen, not because they stopped caring, but because they got tired. Tired of reaching for someone who wasn't reaching back. Miles Monroe understood this. He wrote about how when purpose is lost, misuse follows. And I had lost the purpose of my marriage somewhere along the way. Somewhere between the routines and the responsibilities and the years that all started to look the same. I was using my marriage for comfort, for stability, for the feeling of having done the right thing. I had forgotten that it was also supposed to be a place where she was fully, deeply, joyfully known. Silence, I have learned, is not peace. In a marriage, silence is a symptom, and I had been treating it as a sign that everything was fine. Now, I want to tell you what happened on that Tuesday, because it is the moment this story turns. And it starts with 5 words she said to me that I will never forget. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening. Nothing special about it. No anniversary forgotten. No significant occasion ruined. Just a regular evening in a regular week in what had become a very regular life. We had finished dinner. I was in my chair, reading, or watching the news, or some combination of both that amounted to neither, the way I always was. She was at the kitchen table, not doing anything particular, just sitting, looking out the window. I almost didn't look up, but something made me. And when I did, when I really looked at her, I noticed something in her face that I could not name. Not sadness exactly, something quieter than sadness. Something that comes after sadness has been lived with long enough that it stops feeling like sadness and just feels like life. After a long while, in a voice so quiet I had to lean forward to hear it, she said, Asterisk, I feel alone, even when you're here. Asterisk. I put down what I was reading. I want to tell you that I responded with wisdom, that I said something that showed I understood the weight of what she had just given me. But I didn't. I think I asked her what she meant. I think I got a little defensive, the way people do when they are accused of something they can't yet understand, and they mistake their confusion for innocence. But those words stayed with me. I feel alone, even when you're here. They burrowed in deep, like something that had been waiting to be said for years and had finally found the courage or the exhaustion to come out. I had been a problem solver my whole life. If something is broken, you fix it. If something goes wrong, you correct it. That was how I understood myself as a man, as a husband, as a father. But how do you fix a feeling? How do you correct years of quiet absence? Years of being physically present while emotionally somewhere else entirely? I didn't know. I had never been taught. I had never thought to ask. That night, lying awake in the dark, listening to her breathe beside me, I began to understand something I should have understood 30 years earlier. Being in the same room does not mean you are close. Sleeping in the same bed does not mean you are together. Proximity is not intimacy. And I had been confusing them, comfortably confusing them, for most of our marriage. But it was what she said a few weeks later, when I finally asked her to help me understand, that truly shook something loose in me. And I want to share it with you, because it changed how I see love entirely. Some weeks after that Tuesday, I went to her. I told her I wanted to understand, that I had been thinking, really thinking, about what she had said, that I knew something was wrong and I was ready to hear it, even if it was hard. She looked at me for a long moment before she spoke. The way a person looks at you when they are deciding whether to trust you with something fragile, whether it is safe to hand it over, or whether you will drop it again. Then she said, Asterisk, you never hurt me. You just stopped seeing me. Asterisk, pause. 3 seconds minimum. Asterisk, I am 83 years old, and I will tell you plainly. That sentence rearranged something inside me. You never hurt me. I had taken such pride in that, in never hurting her, as though the absence of harm was the same as the presence of love, as though not wounding someone was the same as cherishing them. It is not. You just stopped seeing me. I could not remember the day I stopped. There was no morning I decided, today, I will stop seeing her. It was not a decision. It was an erosion. Year by year, layer by layer, I had grown so comfortable in this marriage, so certain that because nothing was shattered, everything was solid, that I had stopped looking at her the way you look at someone you are still discovering. I had read her as a finished book and closed her, but she wasn't finished. She never stopped growing, changing, becoming. And I had missed years of it, years of her, just quietly living and becoming and hoping that one day I would look up and be curious again. Miles Monroe wrote that love without intention loses direction. That is what had happened to me. I had love, I believe that. But I had love without direction, love without effort, love that had become so passive it could barely be recognized as love at all. And I had to decide, right then, sitting with those words, what kind of man I was going to be with whatever years I had left. Was I going to explain myself? Justify? Make the case for all the ways I had tried? Or was I going to finally, put down my pride and pick up my wife? I chose her. Maybe for the first time in a long time, I truly chose her. And that choice, that one terrifying, humbling choice, is where this story begins to turn. If this is speaking to something in you right now, if you're hearing yourself in this story, drop a comment below. You don't have to explain it. Just say, I hear you, Billy. That's enough. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, someone in a marriage, someone struggling, someone who loves someone they've been too quiet with, share this with them. That one act might be more important than you know. Now I want to talk about something that I believe is quietly hurting a lot of relationships right now. Today, maybe yours. It is a lie A very comfortable lie. And it goes like this. If nothing is wrong, everything is fine. It sounds like common sense. It sounds like peace. It is neither. The absence of problems is not the presence of love. A marriage with no visible cracks can still be a marriage that is slowly going hollow on the inside. And by the time the cracks show, by the time there is finally something visibly wrong, the foundation has often been weakening for years. I believed this lie for decades. I was the king of it. Nothing is broken, so I must be doing something right. No news is good news. Peace is the same as closeness. But here is what I know now. Love is not the default setting. It is not a thing you arrive at and then coast through. It is a practice, a daily practice, like tending a fire, which does not stay lit because you once lit it. It stays lit because someone keeps showing up. With wood, with attention, even on the cold mornings when you don't feel like it. Especially on those mornings. The second version of this lie, and this one I want to speak to directly, is the belief that effort belongs only to the beginning. That the work of pursuit, of romance, of genuine attention, that belongs to the season before commitment, before the ring, before the vows. After that, you've earned it. The proving is done. Now comes the settled life. But she didn't stop needing to be chosen when she said yes. She needed to be chosen every day after. And I had stopped choosing her somewhere along the way, while believing I never had. I thought romance expired after marriage. Turned out my effort did. I say this carefully. I am not speaking only to men. I am speaking to anyone who loves anyone. Anyone who has let the daily work of love slide because they believe the relationship is solid enough to carry the weight of their inattention. It isn't. Nothing is that solid. Every relationship requires tending. Every person requires choosing. Every day, I want to be careful here. Because people want miracles. They want a 5-step list and a guarantee. And I'm not a salesman. I'm just an old man telling you what happened. What saved my marriage was not dramatic. There was no single breakthrough. No conversation that fixed everything in a night. What saved it was something slower, less cinematic, and far more real than that. I decided to become a student again. Not in a classroom. A student of her. Of who she was at this age. In this season. Not the version of her I had married 4 decades ago, and not the version I had assumed she still was. I began paying attention the way you pay attention to something new. Because, in the truest sense, she still was. People grow. People change. People become. And for too long, I had stopped keeping up with who she was becoming. I had stopped being curious. And the moment you stop being curious about your partner, truly curious, you start to lose them. The first thing I had to learn was how to listen without immediately trying to fix. This was harder than it sounds. When she spoke about something that was weighing on her, my instinct, every time, was to solve it. Reframe it. Make it smaller. Hand it back to her reduced. But she did not always need a smaller problem. Sometimes she needed someone to sit in the full size of it with her. To say, yes, this is hard. I see that it is hard. I am not going anywhere. I had to learn the difference between listening and waiting to respond. For most of my life, I had been doing the second, while believing I was doing the first. The second thing I had to do was apologize, without defending. And this one wounded my pride considerably. Because the moment I added a "but" to my apology, "I'm sorry, but I was tired," or "I'm sorry, but you have to understand," I was no longer apologizing. I was arguing. An explanation, when someone is hurting, can feel like a dismissal. I had to learn to say, "I'm sorry," and then stop and let her decide what to do with that. The third thing was becoming curious again, genuinely curious. I started asking real questions. Not, "How was your day?" which by that point in a marriage has become so hollow it barely registers as language. Real questions. What is she thinking about lately? What worries her that she hasn't said out loud? What does she want that she's not sure she's allowed to want? Curiosity is one of the most loving things you can offer another person. It says, "You are still interesting to me. You are not a story I have already finished. You are still unfolding, and I want to see what comes next." The fourth thing was consistency over intensity. Grand gestures have their place, but what she needed, what people need, truly, was not the dramatic moments. It was the ordinary ones, done with care and presence. Coffee brought without being asked. A hand on her back as I passed through the kitchen. Looking up when she walked into the room. Small things, done reliably. Because reliability, over years, becomes safety. And safety is the ground love grows in. You cannot grow love on broken ground. You cannot build trust with bursts of intensity followed by long stretches of absence. It has to be steady, ordinary, daily. The fifth thing, and the most important, was learning her language. Not how I wanted to love her, how she receives love. My way of showing love, through provision, through faithfulness, through being there, was real. But it was not always the language she needed to hear. She had a different way of feeling loved, and it was my job to learn it. Not her job to translate herself into a language I had never tried to understand. Miles Monroe said that love grows where understanding lives. And I had to accept, humbly, painfully, that I had not done enough to understand her. I had assumed, and assumption, in marriage, is the enemy of intimacy. None of this was quick. None of it was easy. But she noticed, slowly, carefully, the way someone notices warmth after a long cold. She noticed. And she came back. Not all at once, but she came back. I want to speak carefully here, because I can only tell you what I learned from my own marriage, my own failures, my own slowly earned understanding. But I believe this truth is bigger than just my story. She did not need me to be perfect. She never asked for perfection. She asked for participation. She needed to know I was in this with her, not managing from a distance. In it, present, paying attention. She needed to feel like the most important person in the room when she walked into it. Not every room, not some fairy tale performance of affection, just the rooms we shared, just our life. She needed to be able to come to me with her full self, her doubts, her fears, the thoughts she wasn't sure she was allowed to have, and trust that I would receive them without judgment, without fixing, without making her feel foolish for feeling. A person who feels they cannot bring their full self to their relationship will eventually begin to live half a life. And they will do it quietly, politely, without ever telling you why, because they have already tried to tell you, and you were not ready to hear. She didn't want me to be a different man. She wanted me to be more fully the man I already was, just present, just awake, just paying attention. And when I finally began to do that, really do it, not as a strategy, but as a genuine change in how I showed up, something opened between us that I had not felt since the earliest years. Not the rush of new love. Something better than that. Something steadier. A warmth that came from choosing each other after everything. After the years of distance, after the hurt, after the long and quiet drift and deciding to begin again. That, to me, is the most remarkable thing love can do. Not start, begin again. Sometimes, in the quiet of an evening, I think about this. What would I do differently? If I were young again, standing at the beginning of everything, knowing what I know now, what would I do? I would ask more questions. I would assume far less. I would understand that the person standing beside me is not a settled fact. She is a living, growing, changing person, and my job is not to manage that change from a distance, but to stay curious about it. I would not use silence as a weapon. There were years when I withdrew, went quiet, closed off, made her come to me, made her work for entry, and I told myself I was simply private, or tired, or just a quiet man. But silence used as a wall is not privacy. It is punishment, and it leaves marks that take a very long time to heal. I would understand that love is not owed to you because you've kept your promises. It is not a reward for being responsible. It is a responsibility itself, a thing you practice and return to, even when you're tired. Especially then. Youth thinks love is something you find. Age knows it is something you build. Every day, with your hands, in the ordinary moments. I would say more, out loud, where it could be heard. My generation was not raised to spend words freely on feelings. Strength was measured in silence. But I understand now that words of love are not weakness. They are water, and the person beside you is thirsty for them, even when they don't say so. Especially when they don't say so. I would treat every ordinary evening as a gift, not a given. Because one day, one of you won't be there for the ordinary evening. And you won't know which one it was until it's already gone. I would choose her, out loud, often, without waiting for a reason. I need to say something now, and I want you to hear it like it's the most important thing you've heard today. Because it might be. Love neglected does not stay where you left it. This is the thing I did not understand for too long. I believed that a relationship untended was a relationship in pause, waiting patiently for when I had more time, more energy, more space. I believed it would hold. It doesn't hold. What happens to untended love is the same thing that happens to untended fruit. It doesn't stay fresh because no one is actively destroying it. It changes. It softens. It turns. Not all at once. Slowly. Until one day you reach for it, and it isn't what it was anymore. Attention is the rent love demands. And if you stop paying it, if you stop showing up, you don't just fall behind. You start to lose the thing itself. I have seen this too many times. Good people, people who genuinely loved each other, who let the drift go on too long, who treated the absence of crisis as proof that everything was fine, until one of them ran out of patience and the other never even saw it coming. Do not let that be your story. If the person you love is still choosing you, if they're still there, still showing up, still hoping for something between you, choose them back. Actively, visibly, today, not next week, not after the project is done, not when things settle down. Today, because there is almost always still time, but almost always is not always. And the window of opportunity to return to someone you have been quietly drifting from, it can close. I know this because I watched it nearly close on me. I was lucky. I had a woman with more grace than I deserved and a love stubborn enough to wait for me to wake up. Not everyone gets that. I am not a writer. I am not a preacher. I am an old man who made mistakes and was given enough years and enough grace to learn from them. I tell you this because I believe in what Miles Monroe called purpose. He taught that when you understand the purpose of something, you know how to treat it. You know what it deserves. The purpose of marriage is not endurance. It is not a legal arrangement for the managing of a household. It is to know and be known, to walk through the whole of a life beside someone, and to become, through that walking, something neither of you could have been alone. When I finally understood that, when I let that truth settle into me, it gave my marriage direction again. It gave me a reason to show up differently, not from guilt, from love, from finally understanding what love was actually for. I have been married for 57 years. Every morning, I am grateful for that woman, not in a sentimental way, in a real, earned, humble way. The way you are grateful for something you understand you could have lost. Miles Monroe also said this: the wealthiest place in the world is the cemetery, because buried there are ideas never expressed, songs never sung, and love never properly given. Do not let your love stay buried inside you. Say it, show it, choose it, today, not tomorrow. If this moved something in you, if it reminded you of someone you have been too quiet with for too long, go to them before silence does what love should have been doing. God bless you. If this story meant something to you, subscribe, not for the algorithm, because there is more I want to share with you, more I have learned, more I wish someone had told me at 30. I'll be here. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, someone struggling in a marriage, someone who loves someone they've grown distant from, send it to them. Don't think about it. Just send it. That single act of care might be worth more than you know. Leave a comment. Tell me, what is one thing you are going to do differently, starting today? I read every one. Billy, asterisk, don't let silence do what love should be doing. Asterisk.